What's up everybody, Venom here with a quick guide on Diablo 4. Let's get right into it. Now, even though we're in Season 1 and Nightmare Sigils are not new to the masses, there is something that I learned about them the other day that I felt like not a lot of people knew about. So there's a few things about Nightmare Sigils as well as crafting the Sigil Powder and crafting your own Nightmare Sigils that I wanted to cover. So, in today's guide, we're going to be discussing Nightmare Sigils as a whole and how to use them, where to craft them, and how to get Sigil Powder to use for the new invokers of Varshan. So first off, let's just start with what are Nightmare Sigils. Nightmare Sigils are a consumable that you would use to enhance a regular dungeon. When I say enhance the dungeon, it basically makes it more difficult and gives you better loot for completing it, whether that's solo or with friends. You would use this consumable item, it'll ask you if you're sure that you want to use it, and then you'll be able to have a harder version of the dungeons that you've already completed in Diablo 4. It is worth noting that Nightmare Sigils can only be used on World Tier 3 and up, so you cannot use them in World Tier 1 or World Tier 2. You have to at least be in Nightmare mode in order to use Nightmare Sigils. Here's one thing that I did not know about Nightmare Sigils. When you use them and it tells you, are you sure? Do you want to do this Nightmare dungeon? You can actually teleport directly to the dungeon once you activate the sigil. You don't have to run there. So once the sigil is activated, whether it's yours or a friend's, if you open up your map, you will be able to see the dungeon. It'll be blinking on the map. I'm going to show it here. But you can click this and hit travel, and it will teleport you directly to the dungeon that you are trying to do on Nightmare mode. This is something that I did not know. I did not know you could teleport right to it. I always teleported to the quickest waypoint and then ran to it. So this is cool. I don't know if this was just added or if I just never noticed it, but you can absolutely teleport directly to the Nightmare dungeon once you activate the sigil. Nightmare dungeons are more difficult for a few reasons, but it's mainly that they have these affixes or additional modifiers that make it more difficult, and it all depends on the sigil that you use. Before activating the sigil, you can actually see what affixes and what modifiers are on that sigil and will be included in the dungeon by simply hovering over the Nightmare sigil. There will always be one positive affix and or modifier, and then there will be two negative modifiers. Now, when I say two, I mean on the lowest possible tier of Nightmare dungeons. As you progress and get into the higher tiers of these dungeons, there will be more negative modifiers added to them, but I'm just talking about base level Nightmare Sigils that you're going to use. There will be at least one helpful modifier, which gives you a buff. It depends, again, you have to hover over it to see exactly what that buff might be, but you will get at least one buff and at least two negative buffs that are going to either cause explosions, things to follow you and slam on the ground. There's a massive amount of these debuffs, an AoE pool on the floor. It gets a little bit crazy in there. But the point of a Nightmare dungeon is to test your strength, see if you're capable of taking on these regular dungeons at a higher difficulty. You will get more Nightmare Sigils just by going through these Nightmare dungeons. They have a random drop chance from pretty much any mob or chest inside of the dungeon from what I can tell. But the one thing that you can also do is craft them yourself using Sigil Powder. Now, Sigil Powder is not dropped in these dungeons. You actually have to destroy other Nightmare Sigils in order to get them. But honestly, I filled my bags, my consumable tab, with Nightmare Sigils by running several of them in a night, so it's not hard to get them. You just have to bring them to the occultist in any of the main cities where an occultist is located, and he will be able to break them down from the Nightmare Sigils into the Nightmare Powder. Nightmare Powder is also used for the invokers of Varshan, which were just added in Season 1, so you will need this Sigil Powder in order to craft the new invokers. It is also worth mentioning that you can put these sigils in your stash so that you can use them on other characters as you progress and get to that higher tier again on another character and be able to start right out doing a Nightmare dungeon on your own or with friends if you'd like to. And that's going to do it for this guide. I know it wasn't very in-depth, but I just wanted to share what I learned about Nightmare Sigils as well as how to craft them, how to salvage them, and that you can teleport directly to the Nightmare dungeon once you activate one of the sigils. As always, if you like the video, then like the video. And if you like my content in general, then subscribe to my channel. It means the world to me. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!